Hi, I'm Spunde. Today we're going to be going over the main features and important differences between the ADAM, Photon, and Infinity pedals by Darkglass to help you pick which is the right option for you. Or, maybe better yet, just convince you to buy all three. So, what are these pedals? Well, I like to think of them as super advanced versions of Darkglass's existing lineup of available distortion / preamp tones. The main flavors being the vintage microtubes B3K, Alpha Omega, and Microtubes X. These all have compression, distortion, cab IRs, 5-band EQs, MIDI in, aux in, headphone out, stereo balanced or unbalanced line out, XLR DI out, and connectivity to the Darkglass suite via Bluetooth or USB. And they also work as USB audio interfaces. So each one is kind of like taking a pile of Darkglass pedals and combining them into one housing with 3 savable presets. These are for anybody who likes Darkglass tone but wants more. So for instance, I personally have the B7K Ultra on my board. With that, I have one preset distortion tone that I can access, but sometimes if I want a different overdrive tone, I've got to use the overdrive channel on my Microtubes 900 head. And even other times, I also have a Microtubes X pedal for yet another flavor of overdrive. So between all of these, I've got, 3 different distortion presets. I also have the duality, which I've used before, along with the Element Cab Sim and their old compression pedal. Point is, one of these pedals basically replaces all of those. And in the grand scheme of things, if Darkglass would have come out with this 7 or 8 years ago, it would have saved me a lot of money. I know these advanced pedals are pretty expensive, but having one of these allows you to have 3 infinitely tweakable overdrive distortion tones on your board, along with all the other features that they come with. What differentiates each of these pedals? Well, the main thing is the distortion tones and how the signal chain is laid out a little bit. Otherwise, they're relatively similar, with the compression and 6-band EQ and cab sims all working the same. The ADAM has 5 distinct super aggressive models of Nolly's favorite vintage distortion. Photon is based off the Alpha Omega distortion in collaboration with John Stockman, and the Infinity is based off a clean multi-band tube preamp, Microtubes B3K, and vintage microtubes in both normal and multi-band modes. So now we're going to go into the pedals, and I'm just going to go through what the different distortions are and a little bit about the signal chain in them. I'm not going to have the cab IRs. We're just going direct out from the pedals via XLR. The amp behind me is just for myself in the room, and you're going to hear what the distortions are and a little bit of what the EQs are. I've kind of messed around with some different presets here. Our bass signal first goes into the compression. Then the pedal splits the signal and sends it through a fixed multi-band compression based off Nolly's personal settings on one side and the distortion and cab sims on the other, before it's then blended back together with the aptly named blend knob. Then your signal is fed into the 6-band EQ. It's also worth noting that you can change the EQ frequency bands on all of these pedals via the Darkglass suite on your computer or on the app on your phone connected via Bluetooth. So let's look at what some of the different distortions are. Each distortion preset gets a little hairier the further you go, ranging from a more tamed and articulate tone to a full-on just fuzz tone. So let's go through them. That's just clean. So here's the first distortion tone, and I have kind of made some presets with the EQ just for myself, how I might like the tone. I do gotta say the ADAM is really aggressive. So even the first distortion tone with my drive turned really far down and the blend halfway, it's still pretty aggressive. And it really only just gets more aggressive from there. Next is the second distortion tone. You can hear that's like a real fuzzy tone. So if I turn that up more and blend it in more. So that's kind of all the presets on the ADAM. Like I said, I had the drive pretty far down on that and the blend about halfway because it's pretty gnarly. I think one of the coolest things about these pedals is how your EQ actually affects everything. When I first started messing around with all of these, I figured what I'd want is, you know, on the far right, maybe I'd have a clean tone setting for, you know, the third preset, I should say. And maybe my first preset would be like a different one than maybe the next one would be like a super fuzz thing. And I'd have the same EQ for all three of them. But in reality, they're really cool if you mess with the EQ settings because you can get like a different type of attack tone by just messing with your 6-band EQ. So you can see with my, you know, rough playthrough of messing around with some different EQ settings, you can really change the character, especially of the attack of the notes when you're playing through this pedal. So definitely on a per preset basis, I think it's cool to mess around with the EQ. Definitely not what I would have done initially, where I just have one default EQ setting. So it's pretty cool. You can get really, really wildly different tones out of this. Let's move on to the Photon. The Photon is based off of the Alpha Omega Distortion circuit. So this is great for anybody who has any of the Alpha Omega style pedals by Darkglass, but wants to have, you know, 2 more settings than what a single pedal can provide. The signal chain is close to the ADAM, but does not have Nolly's preset multiband compression, just clean tone that you can blend in. With Photon, however, you can choose to put the cab sim in or after the blend via the Darkglass suite. So the distortions are Alpha Omega with growl, Alpha Omega with bite, Alpha Omega with growl and bite, and fifth one is Alpha Omega Studio Rig with growl and bite. And then as always with either your compression settings, your distortion settings, or the cab IRs, there is a 6th off or bypass setting with all of these. So that's the Alpha Omega Photon pedal. Once again, it's for anybody who already has an Alpha Omega pedal but just wants more of those available distortion sounds. That's really the idea with all these pedals too. So let's move on to the Infinity next. So the Infinity, it's another pedal. And this is really basically just like a B3K distortion tone along with vintage microtubes that you can also do the microtubes X like crossover pattern with. So the signal chain's pretty similar, but in modes 1, 4, and 5, you have a low pass and high pass filter that's mixed in as part of the multiband distortion mode. So your tones are first clean tube preamp, vintage microtubes B3K, then vintage microtubes with the multiband crossover, and then the microtubes B3K with the multiband low and high crossover. You can also access extra controls via the Darkglass suite, such as grunt, a mid boost, high pass, and low pass filters. So we're gonna go through each tone mode because they really aren't like, distortions. And like I had said previously, I just have some preset like EQs and stuff in here that hopefully makes it kind of somewhat of what I might set it as. So yeah, it's just a pedal. It has a bunch of distortions on it, has a bunch of the stuff that the other ones do, just different types of flavors. For me personally, I have a Microtubes B7K. I've always really liked that tone, and it would, if I had one of these on my board, it would literally replace half of what I have on here now. So, you know, tuner, distortion, compression, noise gate, other distortion. So they're really cool and really powerful. Oh, God. So, which pedal do you like the best? What Darkglass pedals do you already own? What pedals are on your wish list for the future? Hope this video helps you decide. If you have any questions about these pedals or any other Darkglass gear, give your Sweetwater sales engineer a call today. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. And as always, visit Sweetwater for all of your music and pro audio needs. Thanks.